1, 2, 1, 2. Testing, testing. Ljudtest, ljudtest. Jättebra, tack. Ljudtest, ljudtest. Testar. Ljud var det. Jo, precis. Etta, två, etta, två. Jag vill att Andreas ska höra mig, men han hör mig inte. Han är väl och fika.
Han sitter nog och vräker i sig kak.
Etta, två, etta, två. 1, 1, 1, 1. 2, 2. Nej, just nu ligger den offentlig faktiskt. Men här på YouTube ligger den offentlig. Men 1, 2, 1, 2. Ligger vi ute där ligger vi. 1, 1. Där är väl bra utslag. Perfekt. Hur ser det ut då? Vi ser om det ligger här. Ett, två, ett, två. Nej. Där kommer. Det är alldeles för lågt. Ja, det var wirecast. Det var wirecast bakom. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2.
Maybe this one. So,
får de passa.
Ja, precis. Men det räcker ju. Nej, men här finns det 4.
Jag hälsar.
Ja. En tanke att vi sitter här uppe efter. Så jag kör prestation. Kör prestation och sen så tar vi lite frågor. Nej, ta efter. Kör.
So I think it's time to start, and I'd like to welcome all of you to Vardagsrummet here in Humanisthuset at Umeå University, where we today will have a seminar first and then also an open discussion with the Swedish Research Council and Sven Stavström, who will initially start giving a presentation. I would also like to start to welcome all of you who follow us over the internet and Aurora, so you're all also very welcome. I don't want to take too much time in the introduction, so I would just hand over to Sven and then let's hear what Vetenskapsrådet or the Swedish Research Council are up to right now.
Thank you
Welcome,
very much.
Sven.
Thank you very much, Hans. And it's really nice to see so many here at this time of late Friday evening. So I will make a short presentation about some issues regarding the Swedish Research Council, and then we will leave plenty of time for discussions. We are doing now a tour around the major Swedish universities, and it's really important for us. The aim of this tour is to listen to what you have to say about us, and also, of course, for us to tell you a little bit about what we think is important for Swedish research. So I do this presentation. It takes about 15 minutes maybe, and then we will have a discussion. And during the discussion, I will ask my colleagues to I think we are supposed to sit here and then help to answer your questions. So please, We look forward to these discussions. But first, a few words about the Swedish Research Council. This is where we are sitting in the center of Stockholm. We are about 200 people, persons working here, and in addition, we have also SUNET within our organization. SUNET is sitting at another location in Stockholm, and we also have a unit in Göteborg, in clinical studies. First, one or two words about the Swedish research in an international perspective. We are publishing every second year a research barometer, so taking the pressure of the Swedish research. And this barometer has two parts. One is Swedish research in an international comparison. The other one is more looking into Sweden and comparing different universities, etc. So here is some data from this barometer. And what I show here are 5 key performance indicators. If you go from basically it's 10 o'clock up to 12 and then further on, and you see red is Sweden and blue is top 5 countries for that particular key performance indicator. And those 5 are really quantitative indicators. The total number of researchers per 1,000 inhabitants, total number of publications, and then about the financing. As you can see, Sweden is really among the top, if not the top 5, so at least among the top countries in the world in all these in all these numbers, which is of course is good. Where we are less good is in the only quality indicator here, which is citation impact. So we lag behind there. We are maybe there at place number 12, 13 or so. It depends, of course, a little bit on which year you're looking at. But we are, and we were, if you look back a couple of years, we were much stronger. So we have lost in quality, but increased in quantity. And I think there is a correlation between quantity and quality. The system has increased enormously over the past 20 years. And of course, it's hard to keep up with quality. And here, citation impact is the top 10 publications, the top 10 cited publications, which is measured here. So now the Swedish government has formulated a goal to increase the research quality, and this is also something that we, of course, will be a part in these activities, and we have been given the task to look for other indicators apart from the citation impact to try to follow the evolution and the increase. And there are, of course, other activities also related to that goal. For instance, UKÄ has been given the task to look at quality processes at the universities. So with that said, about the Swedish research in international comparison, I'd like to move on to say a few words about really our key activity, which is research funding. I think most of you are quite familiar with our activities. I just like here to emphasize that when we do funding, we have a number of funding instruments. And we have here grouped them together in 5 categories. So it's research project funding, research environment, career support, operational grant funding, and research infrastructure funding. Does it work? Okay, I go on. So, and we have our budget is 6.4 billion Swedish crowns. So to really what is important here for us, for the board, and let me also mention that we have one representative from the board here in the audience. Britta is here. Maybe you can just, maybe you know everybody. So there is actually two researchers from Umeå in the board. Maria Fellman could not be here today, but so this is good for you to know, of course. If you'd like to influence the activities at the Research Council, you should talk first of all to these members of the board. So we have this number of instruments. We have a certain budget, 6.4 billion. And then the question is, how should we divide this money among those different funding instruments? And so for that, we have a financing strategy. We like to do this in the optimal way. Of course, it also includes that to find the optimal funding instruments. And the set we have today was decided 4 years ago. So we have used them now for 3 consecutive years. And we are actually quite happy with the instruments we have. Maybe we'll change a little bit some of them, but I think, and that's also the aim, to keep the same instruments for a long time, so that they are so you recognize them and be familiar with them. So that's really a fundamental principle here behind those funding instruments. They should be long-lasting. I don't go through them in detail, but I come back to them on this view graph, because here you see how we distribute the money. We think that project funding is the best way to fund research from the point of view of a research council. A typical project is 1 million Swedish crowns per year for 4 years. And in total, we have the budget of, this is from 2016, we had 2.8 billion Swedish crowns. So this means, roughly speaking, that 3,000 Swedish researchers receive a project grant from the Research Council. We still have a number of very good proposals that we are not able to fund. I think this is important to mention. So what the board is doing and what all the councils are doing is try to find money and to increase the budget, to put more money into the project funding, because we still believe that there is room for increasing that budget. The second largest part here is research infrastructure, and this is something that has increased, the budget that has increased enormously over the past 10 years or so. We started 2005 with the Committee for Research Infrastructure, and at that time the budget was 500 million Swedish crowns. Now it's 1.8 billion. And I think there are 2 reasons for that. One is that it is becoming more and more important to have high quality research infrastructure. The second is that it's getting more and more expensive. We have here looked today at the laser lab and the microscopy facilities, and they are really impressive, but I guess also very expensive. And if you scale that up to national research infrastructure and international infrastructures, it's even more expensive. So for instance, you just mentioned CERN. We pay almost 300 million per year, our contribution, our part in CERN. So it's there, it's important, we have to live with that, but we also have to have close discussions, that's at least my point of view, with the Swedish government to make sure that they also believe in the long-term funding of research infrastructure, because it's a long-term strategic choice. Which ones should we pick and be a part of? So we have research environment and research collaboration funding, 1 billion Swedish crowns. There we used to have and still have the Linné environments. They are now beginning to fade away, and the money that is released from that will be put into new research environment initiatives. For instance, next year we will begin with a new call for multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary research that will be visible on our web page quite soon. So this is something I encourage you to think about and to try to establish collaboration among colleagues all over the university. Career support is 500 million, which is also, of course, extremely important. There we have international postdoc, we have starting grants and consolidator grants. If I look into the future, there will be, because Linné is going out, there will be some money transferred from research environment to career support and also to project funding in the future. Here you can see how this the 2 point or no, I think this is the total amount of money going into the different areas. So here you see Natural and engineering sciences is the largest of the areas that we fund. Medicine and health, second largest. Humanities and social sciences, the third largest. And then you see the rest there. Clinical therapy research. This is something that has emerged quite recently, and this is money coming from us, but also from Landstingen. So that's a nice collaboration. Education sciences, of course, also very important. And in the last research bill, if I should mention that here, we got an extra 90 million to add to that for graduate schools. So I think this is also very much needed part of our funding. Development research and artistic research. I should perhaps also mention that in the future you will see an increase in the humanities and social sciences budget, because that was also part of the research bill, the last research bill. And also the board has decided to add some extra money from the money that is released from the Linné environments to humanities and social sciences. So if we look today, this year, the success rate in humanities and social sciences was about 12%. So hopefully we will see that increase maybe up to 15% in the coming 2 or 3 years, which is very, very good, of course. And in natural and engineering sciences and medicine and health, the success rate is about 20% or a little bit above 20%, which I think is really good. And of course, still, as I said, there are really good projects that we cannot fund. So more money is of course needed, but it's not really too bad situation for us there. Few words about research infrastructure. Our role there is to have the overall responsibility for national research infrastructure. So we provide funding for that, and here is mentioned specifically, we are the main funder of MAX 4. This is actually the largest, the single largest investment that we make in Swedish research infrastructure. The budget for that will be around 320 million per year. And this is an initiative, I should mention, coming from the Research Council. So if you go back maybe 10, 15 years, it all started at the Research Council, this initiative to go for the MAX 4 structure. We are members of international research infrastructure organizations. I mentioned CERN before. Here is also mentioned ESS, the European Spallation Source that is built next to MAX 4 in Lund. So we have a responsibility there. We receive money from the government and we pay to ESS, but we also look into, since Sweden is a host nation, we also look into how the construction is going, give advice to the government, etc., and also to ESS, of course. So we have a really close relation with ESS in that sense. We monitor and evaluate what happens at the research infrastructure that we fund, and we also develop strategies and plans for Sweden's long-term needs of national and international research infrastructure. We will publish next year, end of next year, in English, Björn, is a guide for research infrastructure. Roadmap. So we published that, and also we published an appendix to that roadmap, a list of infrastructures that we see are needed that need funding in the future. And then we will, in 2019, have the next call for infrastructure. We had it this year, so we have taken care of many things. I should say I'm really happy for what the Council for Research Infrastructure made this year, that we're actually able to fund a large number of new research infrastructures, and took the difficult decisions to stop funding a number that really didn't live up to the requirements that we have. So to end here, a few words about what we're doing right now and what we will do next year. I mentioned before we had a research bill in 2016 that is about now to start to be realized. We started already this year. I'd like to mention there that we have 2 national research programs, 10-year programs. Not that much money, but I think this is a new concept for us, and it's I think in that sense it's very interesting. The topics are also very well chosen: migration, integration, and antimicrobial resistance. In total, in Sweden, there is 7 of these programs, and we are responsible for 2 of them. Formas are responsible for 3 of them, and Forte takes the last 2 ones. And we work together, the 3 of us, in all these 7 programs. So I think this is really nice also for you that you can see that you don't have to have relations with all of us individually, but we really go together, and that's the idea behind these programs. We have received money in certain areas. I mentioned before extended budget for humanities and social sciences, extra money for access to research infrastructure, in particular Max 4, ESS, and SciLife Lab. E-science is very important, of course, and I saw that you yesterday here inaugurated the very new, or maybe not exactly new, but very powerful high-performance computer, Kebnekaise. That's impressive. Biobanks and registers. Biobanks, I think it's reborn, this initiative, and we look very much forward to that. And it's done also in close collaboration with the hospitals, university hospitals. Registers is also something that we have invested a lot in infrastructure related to registers. RUT, you might have heard about, Research Utilization Tool. And now we also put money into research using these registers. Clinical research, and I mentioned also graduate schools in educational sciences. Last, some of the priorities that we have identified in the work plan for next year. Peer review, we have formulated principles for the peer review. So for us, peer review is really a central activity. We receive about 6,000 applications every year. We have 800 reviewers that take part in the process, and we need to put to educate and put guidelines in the hands of the reviewers. So now we have formulated, based on the principles, we have formulated guidelines, and starting from next year, we will implement those guidelines in the review process. It's nothing really new, but it puts everything in, I think, in a very compact form that will be easy for the reviewers to adopt. Research communication is something also that we have identified as a central activity. Research integrity, we need always to think about, and especially since starting from 2019, there will be a new organization taking care of that, and we will be a part of that in several ways. So this is something that we have to think about. Open access is also, of course, I think on everybody's mind that we have open access to publications, open access to research data. And we have the responsibility to develop guidelines for open access to research data, which I think is a very interesting task, but quite demanding, especially since we are covering all research fields, and it looks very different in different research fields. So we really have to understand that and don't apply the same rules to everybody. That's I think my message here. But we should certainly work it out, and you will probably see, maybe not next year, but in a couple of years, that you will be asked to provide research data management plans into the applications to show how you will make your data open accessible. Evaluation and quality assessment is always on our minds. We will next year do an evaluation of educational sciences. We will develop a new method to do this evaluation and apply it to educational sciences. And then we will move on and go through many of the areas of research, those that we think are most necessary to do an evaluation on. So we have no direct plan on which areas we should cover, but we should indeed work on this in more detail than what we have done in the past, maybe 5 years. If you look back 10 years at the Research Council, we did this constantly, but we haven't done that over the past 5 years. So this is basically what I would like to say here today. So we now take questions.
Thank you very much, Sim. Yes, the idea was that we take now questions, and you maybe are joined by some of your colleagues on,
yes.
On stage. I don't know who is. Yes, I think so, Björn.
Björn, Sophie, Kerstin. Maybe you can just, please come here and you can present yourself.
Yeah.
And
please. Yes, I think we can use that microphone, and then I will run around with the other one and take questions. So please, present yourself.
Thank you. My name is Björn Hallred, and I've been working at this university for 20 years, but since some years I've been in Gothenburg, and I'm Secretary General for Research Infrastructure at the Research Council.
My name is Sofie Björling, and I'm the head of the Department of Research Infrastructures at the Swedish Research Council.
I'm Kerstin Salin. I'm Secretary General for Humanities and Social Sciences, and also responsible for development research and artistic research. And I have my doctorate and my education from this wonderful university.
My name is Mikael Jonsson, and I'm Director of Communication. I'm also responsible for to work with the science communication. And today I take notes, therefore I sit there. But if there are any questions or anything about the science communication, I can answer that.
So please take a chair. I think we have more than half an hour left, so I don't want you to have to stand. But now I'm opening the floor for questions. So please, back there.
Yeah, my name is Anders Hofer, and I have a question about cheating and things like that. And I think it's a huge problem today that 60 to 70% of all research is not repeatable. And I think a driving force behind this is an economical system. So if you have a system that is only paying for the elite, everyone will fight to reach that level. And you are fighting with teeth, claws, everything you have to go there. And what will happen is that we select for the survival of the fittest. That is the cheaters. And I think a solution to hold this problem is that we need intermediate levels of financing. We cannot only finance the top. We need to have something, a step to go up to the top. So we cannot start with grants of 1 million. Maybe we need something in between, maybe 500,000, 250,000. We need a ladder. You should be able to go from the bottom and up. And at the same time, if you are on this edge that you can fall down, if you feel that this fall is very dramatical, that you need to fire all your employees and so on, you will do whatever you can to stay on that level. And that's also a problem. You should allow yourself that, okay, I cannot publish before the VR application, but I will survive anyway. If you have that in your mind, I think research will benefit tremendously.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, maybe you exaggerate the problem a little bit. In certain areas, maybe I've seen those numbers also, but I don't think if you look over the whole area, all areas of science, that you see these numbers. I think that the grant size is something which is discussed a lot within our organization, and the Science Council, they take the decision themselves to what is the budget that they like to provide to each application. The minimum amount is 400,000, I think, for most of the research councils. So it's fully okay for them to do that. But both from the government and from the board, it has been said that we should increase the average size of the budget. So this is something that we have worked on to increase the budget actually over the past 5 years or so. Now I think we have reached a level where we will not increase anymore. So this 1 million per project on average is something that I think we find a good level, because I mean you have to also look what can you do for the money, and to hire a postdoc, to hire a PhD student, you need that amount of money, and that's really what we like to see, how the money should be used to recruit and hire postdocs, PhD students, etc. But there are, of course, certain applications where you don't need that much, and I'm sure that the decision is taken in those cases to have a smaller amount for the budget. I think we also have to think about that we have a success rate of, in some cases, 20%. So we are funding top-level scientists. This is our task, mainly, again, given from the governments. So those, I think that the problem of cheating is among those that we give money to is not as large as if you look maybe on a wider group of scientists. Yeah. And in the end, you get the conflicting results, and you cannot take in that. Yeah. I think this is a very important and interesting question. We have also to look at what happens at the more local scale, at the university, in the research groups, and I think what we should think about is some kind of, maybe we can call it a quality culture within the research groups and departments, etc. So that there is a discussion among colleagues about the quality of the work. So before submitting something, it should be really discussed among colleagues, and so to be exposed for some criticism also locally. I think this is a very important part of research actually, and what colleagues should do. So I hand it back also to you, the research groups, to have this kind of quality assurance locally before submitting or before sending in proposals.
I have a more specific question maybe. I just wonder, why aren't the different committees organized in the same way when it comes to announcing who are sitting in the committees? If you apply, I know medicine and natural sciences, and medicine, they announce the members of the thesis committees before you send in the application, but the natural science do not, and that's a major problem when you're going to choose which committee to go in or apply for.
Yeah, first of all, I think you should choose, given, I mean, what is the subject of the panel,
but that you don't,
not who is sitting there. So this is the first thing. Starting from next year, I mentioned these guidelines that we have now a specific guideline concerning this, and that is to publish the names before the call is out. So what is now in medicine and health will be also in the other
perfect, because that was the only thing I wanted to.
But I don't fully agree to you that you should choose the panel based on who is
absolutely, but if you don't know the names, you know, I was in the committee called Biophysics and Biochemistry, and for a while it was only biochemists, and then it became only biophysicists.
In some cases, the panels are overlapping in subject. I agree. So in some cases, it could be important.
Other questions?
I saw a hand.
Yeah, it was my hand. Hello. Thank you very much for coming here. My name is Olena. I work in chemistry department. I wonder, like, what kind of view you have at our university, Umeå University, in Vetenskapsrådet. Because often you look at the distribution of the grants, and we are not so advanced in how much as a university we get. I wonder how we can do better, how we can impress you to get more money for our research.
Well, I don't think this is really our task to improve the research at a particular university. This is, of course, we are eager about increasing the quality of Swedish research as a whole, but it's really something that I think each university, each researcher has to think about in particular. But I mean, Umeå University is among those that receive most money. I think you are together with Linköping, maybe on place 6, 7 or so. So you are doing really well, and I think what we have seen today, and especially I think this to make specializations, prioritizations. This is something that to be good in a few areas. This is something that I think helps when it comes to getting funding from us. Of course, I know that there is also other interests that the Vice Chancellor has to take, for instance, relation to education, etc. So it's a difficult task for the university leadership to manage both this highest scientific quality and to have also in education a relation to research. So, but I think to make prioritizations, to say we should be good at this and this and this, so a number of areas. That I think is my advice.
Christiane Funk, also from chemistry. I wonder if there will be a restructuration or if there's any plan on restructuration of the Beredningsgrupp. So for me, it seems, or what I've heard from others as well, that it's more and more important because it's very hard really to have an expert of your field in the Beredningsgrupp. So it's more and more important really to sell your research instead of showing this I have done. So the whole selling part is much more important. And for me, I'm coming from plant research, so there's one expert then maximum in the Beredningsgrupp, and maybe that person even is Jev. So really it's the selling part which is important more than the actual research. Are there any thoughts about restructuring so that one has really more experts in the Beredningsgrupp?
Not in the Beredningsgrupp, because it's a group normally, and probably you know this, 12 people or so. And of course, if they are covering a really wide area of research, it's hard to be a specialist in all areas. But nevertheless, their task is to make prioritization, so they have to read and understand the content of the application. But what we will use, maybe to a slightly larger extent, is external reviewers. So it's like, I mean, you send a publication or a paper for publication, that it will be sent out to a couple of expert reviewers. And we will probably use that to a slightly larger extent in the future. We do it, for instance, now we have just completed this Rådsprofessor course, and in that case, it's standard to send out to 2 or 3 external reviewers, and then it goes back to the panel. So I think this is, if we do a change, it will be in that respect to increase the number of external reviewers. But the panels we will keep in the form we have, according to these new guidelines that we have.
Hello. Hi. I am from social sciences. I have a question about open access publication that I saw in your PowerPoint. To pay for open access for one article in social sciences, I think also in humanities, is about 30,000 krona. Do you expect us to pay for open access? If you want open access, don't you think it's the council's and the government's responsibility to put pressure on publishers that have been paid multiple times for the production of the same paper with taxpayers' money? It's their responsibility to make those articles available rather than the academics that have quite limited funding to produce publications.
Very good questions, and good timing also for this kind of discussion. Do you like to say something about that? I can maybe start. Björn, you like to say something?
I think to a certain extent it's possible to put in the money for publication in the grant. But I just want to say that isn't, I mean, open access and the way to do open access within the in science is a continuous discussion, and there is a discussion between the Research Council and different publishers, and also to find other ways of publishing science in other media. And I think it's extremely difficult, and I think hopefully we are in a situation now which is kind of a transition from where we are paying for reading, we are paying for publishing, we are paying everything. And in my opinion, which is at least my private opinion, it is a situation that can't be sustainable for the research community in the long run. But I think it's an ongoing discussion, and it's also difficult because we have not specifically for the Research Council, but in the academic system, also a way of measuring your achievement, which is dependent on where you publish. And as long as we use the publisher's way of reviewing our results in a way that actually make ourselves dependent on paying for publishing our results. And I think we need to see for the system as a whole how to change that.
And I might add that, as Sven said, we have a task for coordinating open access to research data, but the National Library has a similar task for coordinating open access to publications. So within 10 years, the goal is that they will be open, and I think the library is working quite strongly on having this solved, this thing about the publications and the funding of it.
I think right now we are in an unfortunate situation that, as Björn said, we are paying many times for. I mean, we are reviewing the papers, we are paying for subscription fees, we are paying for publishing or for author fees. So it's really an unfortunate situation. We are together with all the universities, the libraries, and with the KB. Discussing with publishers, and we have actually an agreement with the Springer Compact agreement. So this, we have all Springer publications there. You don't have to pay publication fees. We are paying that, but still, I mean, it's taxpayers' money that is used for that. So I just hope that those negotiations will be successful from the point of view of the research community and. But I also think researchers should think about, do we really need to publish in those journals that take this high fee? And I know this is, if you go to some research areas, they have really been able to take control over the journals and reduce the subscription fees and make it open accessible just from day one. So I think also we have a responsibility. US researchers and when we evaluate proposals, we shouldn't look too much on the impact factor of journals. We should look about what is actually written within the papers. And that is something that we will also put into these guidelines that I mentioned, and we will tell our reviewers to have that view regarding articles. So I think we are in a period of change now, but yes.
Yeah, I was going to pick up on that. I work in the communications department, and I was wondering, you have one of your main areas is open access, and then you have research communication. Those are at the moment two very different things, but in the long run, do you see you have like converging objectives or goals for those two areas to see they overlap in some way? Research communication and open access, those strategies.
Yeah, I think it's a question who is the target group. So if you think about scientific publications, then of course the reader is usually another scientist. They are written in that way for experts. But of course there are other forms of communicating research. But I think those channels are normally quite open as it is today. Of course you have to take forskning och framsteg. You have of course to pay to read that. But we subscribe that quite a bit. We are a part of that magazine. So Yeah, I think the open access to publications will not contribute that much to spread science to a wider audience. We have to look for other ways to do that. It's very important, but we have to look for other ways. Maybe open access to data. That could be more important. That there's a wider interest in data in certain areas, at least.
My name is Sebastian Diel. I'm from the ecology department. I want to go back to the question of panel members. I've been in Umeå now for 8 years. Before I was a professor at the University of Munich in Germany. And I've always been wondering who decides on who is sitting in the panels. It seems to be a very non-transparent process. So I've been a member a couple of times myself, and I know how I was asked and so on. Yeah. And I actually remember also that I felt that the panel I was sitting in was not necessarily particularly balanced. So I wonder, in the German DFG, there the members are actually elected by the scientists at universities and research institutes. I wonder whether anything like that could be done, that there's more of a democratic and a more transparent process. Thank you.
So if you look here, we have looked into the peer review quite over the past years. One of the principles is that it should be open and transparent. So if you're saying it's not, then we have not succeeded. But I think this is something that hopefully will be improved. Concerning who, it's the scientific council or the committee that makes the decision who is sitting in the panels, and they do it a bit differently. If you go to humanities and social sciences, they do it in their way, and in natural engineering sciences, they do it in their way. So, in that way, of course, it's not fully consistent what we do at the Research Council as a whole. But in these new guidelines, this will be more controlled and more transparent, and will be documented how it's done. And as I said to this previous question, it will be published much earlier from all the councils. But now it's the scientific council that makes a decision. And that, I think, is quite well known. It should be that it works in that way.
Yeah, but you know, the thing I'm wondering about is, in a way, it's up to the expertise of the people sitting there. What are their networks and their knowledge, which may not be representative of all the scientists in the community in Sweden. If you have a nomination process where, if that is broad, you may end up with a better representation.
Yeah. So, but I think there is, we look for a gender balance, we look for a geographical balance, we look for first of all, of course, to cover all the expertise that is needed for this panel. But of course, with 12 members, we cannot make a full coverage. But this is known. I mean, those guidelines are already there. But I think starting from next year, it will be maybe a bit more clearer how to use those guidelines. So hopefully it will be, as you said, if it's not really transparent today, it will be hopefully next year.
Okay, I have a few questions. The first one is... You hear me? So, okay. First is about, I think you cannot really compare a researcher with 1 or 2 in the group compared to one which has 15 in the group. And that is done right now. And of course, the one with 15 in the group will produce much more than if you have 1 or 2. So I think that is a problem that you need to start to discuss in VR, how to do.
But when we evaluate proposals, I would say that the main emphasis is put on the proposal, the idea of what you will do in the future, and the feasibility of that proposal, etc. So less emphasis is put on the past, what you have done, publications, etc. But I think anyway that the reviewers we have are well aware of the fact that if there is a lot of names on each publication, the share of the PI is less than if you have just 2 names. So I think this is, to me, this seems not to be a
No, it's not that which is a problem. It's a problem if you have many in your own group, not if there is many names on the papers. But if you have 15 people in your group, you can produce much more results than if you have 1 or 2 in your group.
Yes, sure.
And right now they are just directly compared, and one with 15 in the group will always get the money.
I don't fully agree to that statement, but of course, it's we have something like a Matteus effect in the system. If you have a lot of money, if you have produced well and continue to do that, you will get funding also in the future. So, but indeed, we allow for newcomers in the systems. Many small groups can enter and hopefully grow to become bigger. So, I mean, I no statistics that can really tell actually how it is, but my feeling is that we allow for both small groups, individuals, and for larger groups.
Maybe you can do some statistics on it and check.
Yeah.
How many?
It's a good point.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, it's again, it's not really so much what you have done, but it's what your idea to do in the future, because we finance something that should be done in the future, and that is the main issue that we look into.
But I think that maybe 70 to 80% of the ideas are good, because, I mean, that is the grades you give. It's very few that don't get very good on the grade number 4. Wow. So that means that the committees think almost all the proposals are very good. And then, if everything is very good, you start to check instead who has the best publication record.
Yes, of course, both of these criteria counts when you make the final total grade. But anyway, I would say that the research idea has is the most important criteria.
Okay, but you can check it at least. My next question is, if I want to change how science is financed in this country, what should I do? Who should I contact? What is our channel to the government?
Yeah, I think, and you know this, of course, that we have, it's a mixture of the block funding, so the money going directly to universities, so that here in Umeå, I think it's about 50-50 of external and block funding. So the block funding, this is of course an internal affair, and the external funding, there is so many in Sweden, so many funding agencies and foundations. So I think it's hard to make a change in such a way. But if you look at the overall picture, I think you should talk to us, because we have this task of giving advice to the government on research policy issues. So indeed, we are happy to receive input to that discussion. But at the very end, of course, it's the government is making the decision on a very overall scale. So that's of course also, if it's possible to make contact with the government, it could be difficult. But I think the discussion within the university and within a department is very important, to have a lively debate about research policy issues, and maybe that is also then transferred to the university management, and the university management can take that onwards up in the system. So this is maybe the easiest way to and I would say the best way to bring ideas to become reality, to go through the university system.
So you mean the vice chancellor of the university has influence over government decision?
I don't know if Hans is still here, but of course, they have a lot of influence, especially on the, of course, the block funding, the money that goes to university, how that is used, how that is distributed among the different faculties, among the research groups.
I have just one final short question, and that is the ones that get triaged. That decision is already taken in August, September something. Cannot you give them that answer immediately at that time? Because it's much more easy to plan. I mean, if you need to fire people or something, if you know it long time in advance. The decision is already done, and there is no way that they will get funding anyway.
Yeah, this is something we have considered. Our lawyers have advised us not to do that, because then it's a decision on its own, and it's a bit difficult to communicate it. So we have discussed that it might turn out to be like that in the future, but for the moment, we, as I said, we have been advised not to do that. So this is the way it is right now.
Hi, my name is Andrei Chabes. I've been sitting as a panel member several times, like 6 times, and I think that different reviewers use the grading scale very differently, and if you end up with those who tend to give lower numbers in general, you might not get funded. So why not using ranking more? I mean, you can use it on every individual kind of criteria. I think that would be much more fair. It would be, and I think in 2010, 1 year you let us use ranking as a main criteria.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much for contributing to the review process. It's actually very important for us to have active reviewers, both from Sweden and internationally. And I mean, this spread in grades, I think this is very difficult to avoid, because different scientists have different opinions about the quality of research. We see that, I mean, if you submit a paper to a journal, you can receive very different answers from the reviewers. That's why we have the panels. This is really, I think, very important to sit down, discuss, and maybe one reviewer that has given a certain proposal low grade suddenly realizes he or she was wrong in that judgment. So the discussion within the panel is extremely important. I agree fully that we should develop better tools to do the ranking. I don't know the details, but I think there is an activity going on in-house at the VR to develop such a tool. I think it's used in certain areas. Which is your area?
In medicine, I think we use ranking only for doing triage, but then the ranking is not used anymore. Then you go by points, and this is extremely subjective. You know, people just change it randomly, saying, "Oh, okay, let's go from 5 to 7, or let's go from 7 to 3." I don't know. It's if you rank everybody, I think that will be much easier to compare how different reviewers see each application. And then you can quickly check. I mean, if somebody is ranked 1 by one reviewer and 25 by another, then you can discuss.
Yeah. No, the different councils, they have a certain amount of freedom to choose their way of proceeding with the review process. But I think that with these guidelines, we are looking for a more uniform process, and I think a part of that, I don't remember exactly the status of that, but to develop better ranking tools, because I fully agree that is a good complement to the grades.
Thank you.
So my name is Louise Rönnqvist. I'm from the psychology department here. I have a slightly different kind of questions in relation to the responsibility that the university or faculty or institutional level have when we are successful to get money from the Swedish Research Council. Why I ask that is, I mean, I have been successful many times during the last at least 10 years, and I'm very happy for that, of course. But the allocation of time, according to the block money, differ from one year to another, and is, from a longitudinal point of view, extremely difficult to get some sort of continuity in how much time we have for doing research. And of course, this is a time that we are stating in our application for the research grants to the Research Council. We have whatever 40% of our time to spend in this particular project, and we apply from that point of view, or 50 or 60. The problem, as I see it, when we have longitudinal, for instance, 4 years money periods, it's changed. So 1 year we have 50, another year 40, and 1 year maybe just 30 or 35 of the block money. And then my question is, what do you think about this, the responsibility that the university have, or down to the faculty, or down to the institutional level, about how much time we could spend in relation to what we have stated in the application? Because of course they signed a contract and say that we should have the time when they signed it, but it changed during the time being. So I think it's an important question, at least in the concurrence also with different other departments or universities in relation to how much time we can spend for doing the research that we have stated in our project plan.
I think it's an important question that you raise, and I mean, as you said, the prefect signs the contract. That is normal, but that signature means that it should be possible for you to perform the proposed research at that place. But concerning the amount of time that the PI has and the part which is paid from the university, we have very little control over that, and I don't think it's normally so explicit a part of the proposal and our decision how much money that should be contributed from the university. But of course, if you provide us with a detailed budget saying that you are paid 40% from the university, and then we give the money for a PhD student, and all of a sudden your 40% disappears and it's down to 20, and you cannot hire a PhD student, then I think in that situation, if it's really a big change that affects the project, you should inform us about that. But that's in sort of extreme cases, because then we have to think about, is it really possible to continue with the project? But the only thing we can do in that case is to either we stop the project because it cannot be performed, or we continue with the funding. But I think normally we have, as we had today, a discussion with the university management, and we have a dialogue over the years. So I think this is important. Maybe it's good now for me to be remembered about this problem, but we can mention that also when we meet university management and to take this up for discussion, because it's really bad if there's a change in the way you mentioned. And I think that PIs should be paid from the universities, not from our money. Should go in most cases to project funding, that funding of PhD students, postdocs, etc. I know that in certain cases it's impossible, but anyway, this is what we like to see, that our money is used not for professors, for instance, to pay the salary of professors.
Okay, time is flying actually, and that is, I think, a good sign in a way, because it obviously manifests the need to talk to VR. And so I think with that said, I would like to thank you for coming to Umeå and for opening up a discussion with our researchers, and of course everybody here is also to be thanked for attending and contributing to the discussion. But you want to say some final words, Sven? Or?
No, I just would like to thank you for coming here, and I think it has been a really nice discussion. We have received some ideas, we have made notes of those, and I'm afraid I have not been able to answer all your questions, but it's something for us at least to think about, and it might affect our plans for the future. We had a meeting this morning, and I think you mentioned something. And there was a direct mail from one of my colleagues sent to one of her colleagues at the Research Council, and we fixed that already at the meeting. So we really are interested in receiving feedback. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Nej, inte jag. Jag ska